Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost.
Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. You know, I've always liked to fish. I learned to fish at an early age with my dad, albeit it was using a cane pole and a cork. My first job as a kid was working in a fishing and tackle shop. I learned a lot about fishing and learned about how if you don't catch something, you can always lie about it. Through the years, I've been able to, time to time, to enjoy fishing as a hobby. Some of my most enjoyable fishing experiences, my late father-in-law was a wonderful fisherman. I could sometimes be in the boat with him, and he'd be fishing at one end, and I'm fishing the other end. He's catching fish, and I'm not. Obviously, he knew something that I didn't. Through the years, I've noticed that successful fishermen have some characteristics that others don't seem to have, and those same traits seem to follow those who wish to be fishers of men as well. Today's gospel lesson, of course, concerns some commercial fishermen during the time of Jesus. Our Lord had used the boat of Simon Peter as a platform from which to teach along the shore of Lake Gennesaret. And Luke properly uses this terminology to describe the place, although it is sometimes called the Sea of Galilee or the Sea of Tiberias. It is in reality a body of water that's about 13 miles by 7 miles and around 700 feet below sea level. It is actually more properly a lake than it is a sea. At any rate, after finishing his teaching, Jesus tells Peter to launch out into the deep and let down his nets. Now, Peter is faced with a challenge. First of all, Peter and his cohorts have been out fishing most of the night without success, and apparently there were no fish to be caught. And in addition to that, the fishermen had just finished this arduous task of cleaning, repair, and prepping their nets for the next excursion. And the last thing Peter wanted to do was to go out on another nighttime fishing excursion. It is at this point that Peter, however, makes a statement of faith. Master, he says, we fished all night long, haven't caught anything. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net. One of the characteristics of being a good fisherman is that you have to be committed. I've been fishing in wind, rain, oceans, lakes, and ponds and streams. And sometimes you catch fish and sometimes you don't. But you don't give up. Sometimes I've moved 10 feet down the stream and caught fish. Sometimes I've gone home empty-handed. But it never stopped me from being a willing fisherman. Perhaps some of you have watched this program on the Discovery Channel called The Deadliest Catch. That fishing in the Bering Sea has the greatest occupational fatality rate in any state in the country. The weather conditions are usually miserable, the labor is exhausting, and the work obviously is quite dangerous. But you see, one has to be significantly committed to do that kind of work. Now, this idea of commitment is something that really gets under my skin sometimes when I see people who aren't committed to doing much of anything. I don't have much patience with seminarians who don't learn what they're supposed to learn, simply because they're not committed. And that lack of commitment generally flows down to the people they're working with. Bishop Appleton Lawrence, in his book Parsons, Vestries, and Parishes, wrote this. He says, a sloppy or slovenly service is an insult or an abomination to the Lord. Christian people who are not committed to the work of the church, likewise, are an insult to God. When Jesus called Peter, James, and John to be fishers of men, he expected them to be committed to the task at hand. And when Jesus Christ beckons us to that, we should go into the world preaching and teaching and baptizing in his name. He expects us to do it with fervor and with zeal and with all of our ability, and above all else, be committed to what we promised him we would do. Now this brings us to the second requirement of the successful fisherman, that of equipment. Now, I have a garage full of fishing rod tackle boxes that almost rivals my golf equipment in its stature. But I can guarantee you one thing: if I play golf or fish, I'm going to have the right equipment one way or the other. Jesus, however, expects us to be equipped in a different way. Paul spoke this in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. He says, there are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are differences in ministries, but the same Lord. And there are differences of activities, but the same God works in all of us. The manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one of us. In other words, all of us have gifts. All of us have something that we can use in God's work. It's not necessary to be an ordained minister to serve God in a way that's pleasing to him and beneficial to his church. Oftentimes we may not be all that well prepared or equipped to do something, and often we use that as an excuse. Maybe, just maybe, and I think this is very common among many, many people, we just don't listen, and we fail to equip ourselves as well. It's a cute story about a man who's driving up a steep, narrow mountain road. A woman's driving down the same road. The woman leans out and yells, "Pig!" The man, obviously insulted, immediately leans out his window and replies, "Witch!" They each continue on their way, and as the man rounds the next corner, he crashes into a pig in the middle of the road. We have to remember this old saying: God usually plants us where he wants us to bloom. And friends, when Christ challenges us, when we respond, he also provides for us, he also equips us, and he prepares us with all that we need. And then, if we want to be successful fishers of men, we have to have a passion about what we're doing. I don't care if you're a lay reader, if you're on the altar guild, or you volunteer to clean the toilets in the church. If you do it with passion, it shows. You know, it's pretty easy to get caught up nowadays in all kinds of passionate movements, all kinds of movements, anything from trying to save the spotted leopard frog of the Northwest and to saving the environment as well. It's pretty easy to get caught up in passionate movements of some kind or another. Larry Crabb, in his book, Finding God, says the core problem is not that we are too passionate about bad things, but simply because we are not too passionate about good things. Many times, as Christians, we are tempted to be guided by our circumstances instead of what God says. Verse 5 in today's gospel lesson reveals that in Simon's answer. And Simon said, "Master, we've toiled all night and caught nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the nets." And by his reply, you see, he communicates that he and his partners, listen, they're dog tired. This word toil indicates very hard work. The circumstances of that evening have shown that this is almost going to be fruitless. Why do we have to do this again? But Jesus was asking them to take their freshly cleaned nets now out into the deep water and go through this strenuous process of letting down the nets again. But they needed to learn that obedience in Jesus Christ should not hinge upon favorable circumstances always. Just see, God uses us. He uses us in all kinds of ways. The great motivational speaker Zig Ziglar has often said that you are not a meaningless generality. God makes you meaningfully specific. He gives meaning to your life. Sometimes when you least expect it, God comes through for you. You know, oftentimes we're guided by our fears instead of what God says. The greatest obstacle that we face in life is our own fear. The fear of being inadequate. The fear of being a failure. Now, I don't mean that if you have a fear of skydiving, you have to run out and buy a parachute and give it a try. But it is a tremendous loss, a tremendous personal loss if you do not overcome this fear of following Jesus Christ and doing the things that He asks you to do. We have to understand that God does not give us foolish commands. When Jesus told Peter to launch out into the deep and let down your catch, Peter didn't try to come up with any absurd excuses, just polite ones. He really didn't want to object to Jesus' directions. He didn't want to question them, but after all, Peter was a master fisherman. He said, I really know what I'm talking about, Lord, but I believe you, Lord. So I'm going to do what you asked me to do. Simply said, Master, we fished all night with no success, but at your word, Jesus, I'll let down the net. A very obvious lesson here. How easily we can determine that God's commands are foolish, irrational, without meaning. We may not say so, but deep down in our hearts, we begin to doubt, concluding that our Master really does not understand the situation. Listen, how many times have you either said or heard, Lord, we've tried this, and it simply didn't work? Father, I know that I'll ask those people down the street to come to church with us, but they probably won't come. Lord, I know I ought to be teaching a Bible study or serving on the altar guild, but I'm just too tired. Let somebody else do it. All of us have our excuses, and on we go. Human reactions, faithless answers, comments and attitudes, all which fail to take into consideration the person and the power of Jesus Christ. Friends, if we truly want to be successful fishers of men, we have to renew our commitment and use the gifts God has given us and do it with a passion. Above all else, when Jesus calls us, let us never be afraid to launch out into the deep. Amen. Remember the word.